into 5-Wide Fantasy. Today's video, getting to the wide receiver position for Week 11 of the fantasy season, helping you with start-sit decisions for each and every game on the slate. Before we get to it, though, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe. We're almost 20,000 subscribers. We're going to be there very, very soon. If you guys are new or you've been hanging around all season long, we're going to be live streaming for Thanksgiving next week, Thursday. So come hang out. We're celebrating hitting 20,000 subscribers here on YouTube. We're almost there. So really, really appreciate all the support. And as well, go check out our friends over at BetFred. If you sign up, deposit $50, you bet $50 on any market, they're going to give you $250. $250 in free bets. So that link is down below in the description. Coming to Ohio very, very soon. On January 1st, it's launching. So go check that out. And as well, if you guys are new, and you don't know, we always do the BetFred Boost for each and every Sunday. The Sunday slate this week, I've got 2 plays that I love that we'll have boosted and parlayed on the boosted section over at BetFred. The 2 plays I love, I think the Eagles just continue to be so ridiculously overvalued. I've been able to make some money from it the last 2 weeks with the Commanders and then also with the Texans. They're 7-point favorites on the road in Indianapolis, and this is an Indianapolis team that, again, I know Matt Ryan stepping back in at QB certainly helps, but as well, I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. I know the Eagles made the addition of Ndamukong Suh this past week. I'm not sure where he's at, if he's going to be available to play this week. I'd be surprised if he is. But I think this Eagles team can be run on, and I think the Colts will do just that at home. Give me the Colts +7. Absolutely love that. And then I'm going to parlay that with Dameon Pierce under 79.5 rushing yards. The Commanders are an elite run defense. I know I still have Dameon Pierce as like a top 12 option this week. I think there's a chance he scores and can still put up 60 or so yards in this game, but 79, getting to 80, I think is going to be tough. No running back has gotten to 80 rushing yards against the Commanders since week 5, Derrick Henry. Or maybe it was week 4, Derrick Henry. I think it was week 4, Derrick Henry. And he had 28 rushing attempts to do it. And he had 100 yards rushing, but he had 28 rushing attempts. This Commanders defense is very, very good against the run. I like the under here for him. So I'm parlaying Dameon Pierce under with the Colts +7. That'll be boosted at BetFred, so go check that out. That link is down below in the description. Let's get to the opening matchup here. 1 o'clock on Sunday. We'll start Eagles-Colts, that game I just mentioned. How I see this game breaking down, we have Matt Ryan back at quarterback, so that can give us a bit more faith in some of these receiving options. We saw Alec Pierce play well with Matt Ryan at QB. Michael Pittman was pretty serviceable, but this is a very tough matchup. We've got the Eagles here, who are 8th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Tough matchup. They're 1st in passing DVOA. Honestly, I'd probably look to some other options here. I see Michael Pittman as a wide receiver too. I think you could still play him here. I still see him as the number 1 option, but he's someone that I kind of will be looking at more in the flex spot as a back-end wide receiver too. These other options, I know we had the good week from Paris Campbell. We could get one from Alec Pierce. I think this is a Colts team that'll just lean on the ground because that is the best way to beat this Eagles team and give themselves a chance. On the other side, the Colts have been an elite defense from a fantasy perspective. I'm pretty sure, they're 2nd in fantasy points to wide receivers. I believe they're also top 10 in fantasy points to running backs. In this Colts team, they're like a mediocre team in terms of like their actual coverage grade and their actual DVOA. So I think in this spot, Dallas Goedert is going to be out for the foreseeable future. I still think Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are guys you want to play. I know A.J. Brown's been limited in practice. Not concerned there. I still think this Eagles team will probably be looking more to the pass game. They do very early on typically, and Miles Sanders hasn't been all that efficient the last few weeks. So I still play both of those pass catchers. Next game is Rams-Saints. This game is going to absolutely stink out loud. It is going to stink out loud. I saw Brian Allen not practicing, saw Andres Pete not practicing. Pretty sure I saw, was it Ramczyk not practicing? These offensive lines are in absolute disarray. We've got Andy Dalton still at QB. If we start with the Saints, I'm going to be playing Chris Olave week in and week out. I think he's a guy you just can't sit regardless of matchup, just with the opportunity that he has with that team. And then the other side with the Rams, man, I think so. It looks like it's looking like the Saints could be without Cam Jordan and Marshawn Lattimore here. As I was looking at the injury report, yeah, they weren't practicing as of Thursday. So Marcus Davenport as well not practicing as of Thursday too. So I think Higbee is the number 1 play here, but you could play Allen Robinson. I think in this matchup, Matt Stafford's going to be back. I think Allen Robinson is the guy who will kind of elevate in that role. I think certainly like this team, when they're looking for a number one, now that Cooper Kupp is out, I think Robinson's the easy guy to go to. They always talk about wanting to get him more involved. It never really ends up happening because of how much of a demand Cooper Kupp has. But I think with Kupp out, Robinson will be that number one guy. I would play him as like a wide receiver 3. I see him finishing as like a wide receiver 30 this week maybe. So I think you can still definitely look to play him. Bears, Falcons. This one is a little bit difficult because obviously the Falcons are 31st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, so any team that matches up with them can have a productive day for their pass catchers. But it's the Bears, right? Like the Bears' passing volume isn't there. I know that the Falcons are a team you can still run the ball on. The Bears want to do that. So I would be a little bit wary of playing a Darnell Mooney, a Chase Claypool. Kmet has been the guy that's led in targets the last number of weeks. He's been really, really good from a fantasy perspective. I think Mooney would be a decent flex option here. I think you could play Mooney in this matchup. But again, I think if you have some guys with better floors like a Jacoby Myers against the Jets, maybe not. No, maybe not so much. If you had a Garrett Wilson, I'd play Garrett Wilson or play even a Brandon Cooks potentially. Yeah, Brandon Cooks over a Darnell Mooney in this game. On the Falcons side of things, I think we're firing away. The Bears are 30th in pass DVOA. They're finally slipping back here in terms of their fantasy points allowed. I think Drake London's a quality play here. Same goes for Kyle Pitts. If you can't play these guys in this matchup, like when are you ever going to play Drake London then? Because this is a good matchup for them in terms of how good the Bears secondary has been lately. They've been really, really bad the last few weeks. Commanders, Texans. That game we've touched on already. Let's start with the Commanders side of things. Going against the Texans defense, they're 5th in fantasy points allowed, but I've seen both Jerry Hughes and Derek Stingley not practicing. I don't know if Hughes is more of I was trying to look into it. I couldn't figure it out. If Hughes is more of like a rest thing, as more of a veteran player. We've seen that a lot in the last few weeks. A lot of guys sitting out of practice just for rest reasons. But man, I think if Derek Stingley's out, I think you can definitely get to this pass defense of the Texans. So I'm looking, Terry McLaurin is now like a weekly start. I don't think there's a lot of scenarios where I'd be sitting him because of the fact that Heineke just elevates him so significantly compared to Wentz. Like now we're getting some more big plays. He's the number one option. I look to play him. I'd be less excited about playing a Jahan Dotson or Curtis Samuel here because there's got to be something to the fact the Texans are 5th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So it's definitely Terry, and then the other two are a little bit more of desperation. And especially because the Commanders have been running the ball a fair bit lately, and this is a very plus matchup for their run game, so that will probably leave less volume for these secondary guys. And Samuel, as great as he was early on, is now a secondary guy because McLaurin's target share has certainly increased with Heineke at QB. On the Texans side of things, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball well. I think Nico Collins could be a decent flex play. Same goes for Brandon Cooks. I think Collins, we talked about in the waiver wire video that his role is starting to become a little bit more reliable. If we see him making more plays in those intermediate areas, that is certainly very, very, very nice. And the other thing is, like the Commanders 25th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, they can be susceptible to some big plays. And that's kind of Nico Collins' game as well. Cooks, I still have some confidence in him as being the guy that can demand that number one role. It's just like, where is his motivation at this time of the year? I'm willing to give him another chance. If this still goes bad in another plus matchup, like he's going to be the guy that kind of sits on my bench for most of the year, probably moving forward. Jets, Patriots. Saw this game a few weeks ago. These are two teams that are elite against the pass this season. We've got both of them top 7 in fantasy points allowed, top 6 in pass DVOA. So what do we do here? I've mentioned this before. Garrett Wilson is a guy I'm playing each and every week, regardless of the matchup. Yes, Ahmad Gardner's going to be out there. Yes, the Patriots are like 4th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I think Garrett Wilson is a matchup-proof type player because he's got very, very significant volume. No Corey Davis as well, and always that opportunity to score in the red zone. So I love Garrett Wilson each and every week. Get him in your lineup. And then on the Patriots side, so Jacoby Myers' perspective, like he's not going to see like Sauce much at all because Sauce will be playing on the outside and Myers will be in the slot. But again, this is a matchup that I think will be very messy, not a lot of points. I don't trust this Patriots team to be able to move the ball through the air against the Jets or really at all. Like the Jets are very, very good defense. They have one of the best, I think the second best coverage grade in the NFL, 88.8 coverage grade. So I'm not looking to play any Patriots wide receivers in this game. It's really just Ramondre Stevenson, and that's it. Lions-Giants. Game here. If you start on the Giants side, like I'm seeing Wan'Dale Robinson not practicing, you're going to be asking me maybe about Darius Slayton in some of your deeper leagues. I think this is another case of the Giants really leaning on the ground game, running the ball 30-plus times here. This game will probably not have a lot of plays. And can you trust Darius Slayton to like give you a big play at the end of this game? Like, or at any point in this game? I don't want to do that. There's just not enough volume, and then I need him to like break a tackle, score a touchdown on like really low volume. I'm not looking to do that. I know the Lions like 24th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I'm just still not looking to do it here, even in a plus matchup. On the Lions side of things, it's really just Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nobody else I'm looking to consider. The Giants 3rd in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. It's because of that slow play. It's because there's not a lot of volume. But Amon-Ra is consistently one of my favorite players coming here into the end of the season. Panthers-Ravens. I mean, there's not much to talk about with the Ravens. I'm not playing a Devin Duvernay. I'm not playing Deshaun Jackson. Hasn't been practicing. He's not even going to be available. And there's just nobody. James Prochet. Like I don't care. There's nobody I'm playing here in this at the wide receiver spot for the Ravens. They're going to ground and pound and run this ball probably 40 times in this game. On the Panthers side of things, we've got a Ravens team 27th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. If you're asking me, like, obviously DJ Moore, I definitely play. On like the Terrace Marshall side of things, I think the Panthers are going to be they're going to be down in this game. They're 13-point underdogs here. So I do think they'll need to throw the ball a fair bit. You know, that can have an impact on Foreman just being in a bad game script. Like, why would they keep running the ball? Baker Mayfield at QB, I do like him over PJ Walker. But there's also the question mark of we haven't seen Terrace Marshall and Baker Mayfield when Marshall's been in this elevated role now. So that leaves some question marks. That makes me a little bit more hesitant, especially what we saw from Baker. Baker was just absolutely terrible in those first 4 weeks. Even with Moore, it was bad. But I think now without Robbie Anderson, Moore's role is definitely way more established in this offense. Browns-Bills. Game moved now indoors. Definitely helpful for the Bills here and even the Browns. Definitely needed it. I know in Buffalo, the last time they saw this type of snow, like grocery stores were closed. I don't think there was really a chance they were going to play this game if it really materialized to 3 to 6 feet of snow. So the Bills at home, but in Detroit, we've got a Bills team here that will definitely benefit from being indoors. I think that really changes how I feel about Devin Singletary because I know I had him very, very high this week. But the Browns are still a team that's been pretty bad against opposing running backs, so it can still be the case. But they're also not very good against wide receivers, bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So I think some of the guys you want to look to between Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, I think both of those guys are two players you do want to play. I'm not looking at an Isaiah McKenzie, though, in this game. On the Browns side of things, Amari Cooper is a guy you're going to start week in and week out, even in this difficult matchup. I would lean against playing Donovan Peoples-Jones. I'd probably look to sit him here. I think this isn't as bad of a matchup as it was last week for their ground game. So I do think Chubb will be a little bit more involved. And I do think DPJ has been riding some fantastic performances so far, but that's based on like some really good volume. And I think here is a bit tougher to be able to do that. Next game, Raiders-Broncos. I mentioned this in our, or actually this video will come out tomorrow, but I mentioned that I really like Russell Wilson in DFS this week. I do think this is a game for the Broncos where they have a Raiders team who's dead last in passing DVOA. They're one of the worst coverage grades in the NFL. I think they're going to be able to move the ball through the air, and I don't think they haven't shown any ability to be able to run the ball lately. So Cortland Sutton, who will likely be in a role without Jerry Jeudy, who hasn't been practicing, is definitely someone you want to play. And then on the other side with the Raiders, this is an incredibly difficult matchup, right? Nobody beyond Devontae Adams would I consider playing here, other than, of course, like Foster Moreau, just because of his role in this offense, and the tight end position can be much, much worse than Foster Moreau. And the role that he has, he's the second option here. So, but otherwise, like Matt Collins is not someone I'm looking to start against the Broncos. I think that's kind of a given. Steelers, Bengals. Steelers at home here. Cincinnati, obviously no Jamar Chase for another week. I think that of course makes Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins great plays here against the Steelers, who are dead last in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. But at the same time, man, I mean, TJ Watt being back can certainly have an impact. So definitely a little bit of tempering of expectations here of like really big weeks for these guys, because you just see that plus matchup with how bad the Steelers have been from a fantasy perspective to wide receivers. But Watt can have an impact against a Bengals offensive line that's one of the bottom graded in the NFL. So on the Steelers side, though, it's a tough matchup. The Bengals, 9th in fantasy points allowed, 9th in passing DVOA. What do we do here? I think a lot of this will depend. I see Deontay Johnson as, I know it's at home. I see both of Deontay Johnson as a wide receiver 3. Pickens is like a wide receiver 4. I think you could still play these guys, but it's because of like the volume they have in this offense. But I think this is a tough matchup. So I don't have... Deontay had really high hopes last week. I expected him to have a big week, and it didn't materialize. So I'm not as much in on it this week against the Bengals pass defense. It's getting a little bit healthier as well in the secondary, which is a good thing. Cowboys, Vikings. Very interesting matchup here. Cowboys team that's very good against the pass, is one of the best coverage grades in the NFL, but they're 22nd in fantasy points allowed. So it's not like they've been a really elite team from a fantasy perspective in limiting wide receivers. So I think really Justin Jefferson's a guy I, of course, want to play. I do think the Vikings will lean on the ground game here, so I don't want to look to Adam Thielen in this matchup, to be quite frank. So I would just go with Jefferson there. On the other side, though, the Cowboys, I really like Michael Gallup, and I really like, of course, CeeDee Lamb here. Gallup has seen some pretty good volume the last couple of weeks. I think he's had 7 targets in each of the last 2 games. Hasn't been able to hit a big play, score, find the end zone. Vikings are 29th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I think this is an opportunity for Gallup to kind of have that breakout game. Nobody really has been paying attention to him since he's come back from that injury. I think this is a plus matchup for their pass game, not so much for their run game. I expect some really high volume here from the Cowboys in the pass game. Honestly, I should have looked to Gallup at BetFred here in terms of his receiving line. I think that'd be a great play as well, or maybe even him to find the end zone. Completely forgot about that. I love Gallup this week. Chiefs-Chargers, Sunday Night Football. Just pure torture that I have to continue to watch my favorite team play on Sunday night when they're just a shell of themselves. They're at home. Obviously, the Chiefs are like 5-point favorites in this game. The Chargers are just brutally beaten up on that defensive line. I don't know how they're going to cause any problems for Patrick Mahomes here. He's going to have plenty of time to get this ball out and get it to these playmakers. Love Kadarius Toney here with Juju and Mecole Hardman to be out. Marquez Valdes-Scantling's dealing with an illness. He's sick. The Bills have been very sick this week too. They have a ton of guys sitting out because of illness. So I think if Valdes-Scantling's available and plays, I think he's certainly a guy you want to look to play here against the Chargers. Because like I said, the Chiefs will be able to throw the ball with ease. I mean, they'll be able to run the ball with ease too, but I really like what Kadarius Toney can do this week. I'm so excited to watch him play in that primetime matchup. It's going to have a lot of people paying attention to him, I'm sure, and getting to figure out getting to see what Kelsey had been hyping him up all week for, of how on earth did the Giants let this guy go. He's incredible. I'm just happy we have him here, and I think he has a great chance to put that on display. He's just a tackle-breaking machine, man. It's incredible. On the Chargers side, very interesting. So I think Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I'm as locked in as I can be, but I don't get much more information other than they're limited in practice. They're practicing. Keenan Allen is not someone I want to play. I know this could be a good matchup. The Chiefs are 28th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, but I think Allen has a chance of being on like a limited snap count just with that type of injury, with the hamstring injury. But if Mike Williams is available, I definitely play him because he has a better chance of, if he's playing and available, that he won't be on a limited snap count. Like the ankle injury is something that he's not really, the sprain is not going to get much worse in my mind, or can't really be tweaked. There's less of a likelihood that it's tweaked than a hamstring injury. So if Williams is available, this is a good matchup. I would look to play him. But then that you're asking yourself, if you're a Joshua Palmer manager, what do you do? I would definitely, if Mike Williams and Keenan Allen play, I would sit Palmer. If just Mike plays, I'd probably still sit Palmer. I just see this as a better opportunity for the Chargers to potentially run the ball as well, which they haven't been able to do the last 3 weeks. So That's how I'd kind of see this. But of course, if both these guys end up being out, which there's still a good chance that happens, Palmer's definitely someone you want to play. And you could even potentially play DeAndre Carter. Last game, 49ers Cardinals on Monday night. A game here where the Cardinals are just a dead team walking. I can't believe Cliff Kingsbury still has this job. But the Cardinals, now without Zach Ertz, I know Marquise Brown has been practicing. That is something that I probably should look at here. Give me a second, actually. Let's pull this up because that would be good to... I would assume Marquise Brown's practicing still like in a limited fashion. Actually, I don't even see him on this injury report. That's interesting. So whatever ends up happening there, we'll go through the scenarios. If Marquise Brown plays, I definitely play him. Now that the Cardinals are down another pass catcher in this offense, we've seen from Rondale Moore to be able to be that number 2 option can be very productive. And then if Marquise Brown isn't playing, Rondale Moore is going to be a great start. But the third guy I probably wouldn't play here because I really do respect this 49ers pass defense. They're top 10 in DVOA, but they are 20th in fantasy points allowed. That's how I see things there from the Cardinals. The 49ers side, man, it's really tough. The Cardinals are top 10 in fantasy points allowed. They've been actually much, much improved from early in the year. The problem is I think the 49ers will continue to lean on the ground game. Brandon Ayuk has been the guy for Jimmy G, it seemed, over the last 5 to 6 weeks. So I do think that you can play both Ayuk and Samuel. I'm really worried about Samuel, man. I'm really, really worried. But I need to, I can't just sit this guy because he's being included in the ground game as well. And I just don't expect with his talent for this to continue to be him being the third, fourth fantasy option for this team. So I'm going to continue playing him. But it's, man, we just, one more week here for me to really understand what to expect going forward now that this team is completely healthy when it comes to those offensive weapons. All right, that's each and every game for week 11 of the fantasy season. If you guys don't know, we're live on Twitch at 11 a.m. each and every Sunday. That link to the Twitch channel will be down below in the description. Come hang out with us. Any last minute questions when it comes to start sit, any injuries that develop, or any players sitting out right before the week and who you should slot in, happy to answer those questions over on the Twitch. So come join us there, 11 a.m. every Sunday. We're live. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.